In the tranquil depths of the prehistoric ocean, where the world's clamor dissolves into the soft susurrus of ancient waves, and your weary eyelids seek the gentle drift of dreams, imagine a sea so vast and serene, it cradles the dawn of life itself. Primordial creatures gliding through azure veils, their forms a luminous lullaby etched in fossil memory. What if these gentle wonders, from the graceful ammonites spiraling in silent currents to the ethereal jellyfish pulsing like forgotten heartbeats, held the key to unlocking the locked gates of sleep? Their timeless rhythms a soothing symphony for the insomniac soul. Tonight, as restless thoughts ebb and flow like unquiet tides, let this be your ultra hook. Unlock the secrets of the prehistoric ocean and discover how our ancestors' watery cradle found peace in its depths. This isn't just history, it's a tranquil journey back to Earth's earliest marine serenity, designed to gently guide you into a restful, dream-filled sleep. Close your eyes, dear seeker of slumber, and let the ocean's velvet veil enfold you as we drift through its gentle wonders, each one a balm crafted to ease the heart into profound tranquility. Sienna Lark had not felt the mercy of deep sleep in 6 cycles of the tide, not since the submersible's failure off the Galapagos that shattered her marine biology grant and left her 37 and adrift in Seattle's rain-veiled harbors. A deep-sea researcher by passion, she spent her days in the aquarium's shadowed labs, charting coral ghosts through digital lenses that blurred the boundary between wave and screen, her nights of vigil of ceaseless currents spinning in her mind like unmoored kelp. Her loft in Belltown was a sanctuary of sleeplessness, nautical charts pinned to walls like unanswered prayers, herbal teas steeping eternally on the stove, and a hammock strung beneath a skylight that framed the mocking shimmer of urban bays. Healers spoke of abyssal anxiety, a pressure from the depths where the infinite pressed too close, prescribing lavender infusions that soured her dreams, and audio tracks of ocean waves that mocked the Puget Sound's murmur outside her casement. Colleagues, once a school of camaraderie, had dimmed to distant echoes, their invitations lost in the abyss of her fatigue. Yet on that fog-shrouded February evening in 2026, as the Space Needle's lights flickered like bioluminescent lures stirring,
Sienna's fingers, calloused from dive logs, brushed against a relic in the aquarium's archive, a fossilized ammonite from the Devonian seas, its spiral shell pulsing faintly in the lamplight, coiling not in chaos, but in serene symmetry. Her breath caught, not in alarm, but in the first fragile bloom of wonder. What if insomnia was not a modern malady, but an echo of those ancient oceans, their gentle wonders a balm for the restless spirit? What if the ammonites, those quiet spirals of the Paleozoic, had inscribed repose not for predators, but for every soul wandering the dark? She cradled the ammonite in her palms, its weight a grounding force like the ocean's own abyssal calm, and felt the shell's ridges yield facts as soothing as a mother's murmur. In the cradle of the Cambrian explosion, some 541 million years ago, the prehistoric ocean, that vast blue womb of life, birthed trilobites, those gentle scuttlers of the seafloor, their segmented bodies gliding through silty veils, not with frantic urgency, but with a rhythmic patience that mirrored the current's own unhurried breath. Opabenia, with its 5 eyes and grasping proboscis, was no monster of nightmares, but a curious wanderer, its movements a slow ballet in the Ediacaran gardens, where frond-like organisms swayed like forgotten lullabies. Sienna traced the ammonite's coil, imagining those ancient seas, their waters a temperate 20 degrees Celsius, infused with the faint bioluminescence of early plankton, a natural nightlight that softened the abyss into a cradle of glow. These facts whispered relaxation, the Cambrian oceans divided time into tidal rhythms, each high and low a natural metronome for the body's cycles, aligning rest with the moon's pull. Cancer's claw softened to a guardian's watch, Pisces' fins curved like a hammock's arc. In the quiet of their burrows, trilobites would curl into defensive balls, a posture of surrender that echoed the fetal position, allowing the ocean's gentle pressure to lull them into torpor, their exoskeletons etched with patterns that caught light in prismatic hush, turning the seafloor into a mosaic of serenity. Sienna's fingers, calloused from dive logs, brushed against a relic in the aquarium's archive, a fossilized ammonite from the Devonian seas, its spiral shell pulsing faintly in the lamplight, coiling not in chaos, but in serene symmetry. Her breath caught, not in alarm, but in the first fragile bloom of wonder. What if insomnia was not a modern malady, but an echo of those ancient oceans, their gentle wonders a balm for the restless spirit? What if the ammonites, those quiet spirals of the Paleozoic, had inscribed repose not for predators, but for every soul wandering the dark? She cradled the ammonite in her palms, its weight a grounding force like the ocean's own abyssal calm, and felt the shell's ridges yield facts as soothing as a mother's murmur. In the cradle of the Cambrian explosion, some 541 million years ago, the prehistoric ocean, that vast blue womb of life, birthed trilobites, those gentle scuttlers of the seafloor, their segmented bodies gliding through silty veils, not with frantic urgency, but with a rhythmic patience that mirrored the current's own unhurried breath. Opabenia, with its 5 eyes and grasping proboscis, was no monster of nightmares, but a curious wanderer, its movements a slow ballet in the Ediacaran gardens, where frond-like organisms swayed like forgotten lullabies. Sienna traced the ammonite's coil, imagining those ancient seas, their waters a temperate 20 degrees Celsius, infused with the faint bioluminescence of early plankton, a natural nightlight that softened the abyss into a cradle of glow. These facts whispered relaxation. The Cambrian oceans divided time into tidal rhythms, each high and low a natural metronome for the body's cycles, aligning rest with the moon's pull. Cancer's claw softened to a guardian's watch, Pisces' fins curved like a hammock's arc. In the quiet of their burrows, trilobites would curl into defensive balls, a posture of surrender that echoed the fetal position, allowing the ocean's gentle pressure to lull them into torpor, their exoskeletons etched with patterns that caught light in prismatic hush, turning the seafloor into a mosaic of serenity.
Fields, nature's compass for restful migration. These observers of the deep, in waters rich with bryozoans building lace-like colonies, created underwater tapestries where light danced in prismatic calm, the salinity a soothing 35 parts per thousand that buoyed the body like a flotation tank. Sienna imagined them, colonies of blastoids, echinoderms perched on stems, filtering the current with feathery arms that swayed like meditative fans, their symmetry a mandala for the mind's repose. In the quiet abyssal plains, coelacanths lurked in shadows, their lobed fins paddling in slow harmony, hibernating during scarcity with metabolisms dialed low, a lesson in conservation that turned hunger into hush. One soothing revelation: the Carboniferous saw amphibian ancestors emerging to shores, but the ocean remained a cradle, its tides rocking egg masses in gentle waves, ensuring the next generation's dreams were woven from the sea's eternal rhythm. The morning light softened, and Sienna felt drowsiness crest like a wave from those ancient depths, the Ammonites' legacy a lullaby of luminous facts. In Peru's contemporaneous waters, the first true whales, basilosaurids, swam with serpentine grace, their blowholes exhaling in slow sighs that bubbled to the surface like released worries. These gentle giants, in oceans teeming with mollusks, created symphonies of serenity with low-frequency calls that resonated through the water, a natural base for the soul's repose. Sienna felt her eyelids flutter, sinking to the imagined rhythm of those calls. A pod resting on the thermocline, bodies aligned with magnetic north, their echolocation clicks softening to whispers at night, allowing the group to drift in communal torpor. In the quiet trenches, hagfish coiled in mucus cocoons, a self-made blanket for slumber. Their primitive forms a reminder that rest was evolution's first gift. One soothing revelation bloomed like a basilosaurid exhale. The Eocene seas experienced warm currents that stabilized temperatures to 25 degrees, promoting migratory rests in equatorial lagoons, where the water's density cradled the body like a hammock, turning the ocean into a global nursery for dreams bloom.
The ammonite behind Sienna's ear unfurled into a single silver spiral that caught the Puget Sound's last sigh and carried her backward through time until the moon itself lowered like a warm blanket across the Triassic Sea. She arrived barefoot on a reef of soft limestone, worn velvet smooth by 240 million years of gentle waves. The water so clear she could see her own reflection curled inside a sleeping nautilus. At the reef's heart floated a woman in a cloak of midnight blue kelp, barefoot, her silver hair braided with tiny phosphorescent plankton that chimed softly whenever the tide forgot to rise. She was not named in any fossil record, yet Sienna knew her as the keeper of the first dawn, the one who taught the ocean to dream in slow Triassic circles. In her hands, she carried a single chambered shell glowing the exact rose of a reef at Compline, and a tiny crystal bowl filled with liquid starlight skimmed from the Panthalassic at the moment the moon first learned to pull. "Tonight," she whispered, voice the hush of kelp brushing kelp, "we fill only the chambers that forget to wake the tide." She tipped the bowl, let one perfect drop fall into the shell, and painted a tiny rose spiral on the air above Sienna's heart. The spiral trembled, rose, and became a miniature nautilus, no larger than a child's hand, its chambers humming a lullaby in the language of warm water over limestone. The keeper caught the nautilus on the tip of her finger, rolled it gently until it became a tiny ichthyosaur, no larger than a sparrow, wrapped in a blanket of midnight blue kelp and cradled by a sleeping reef whose corals had turned into pillows of warm limestone. She placed the ichthyosaur on Sienna's collarbone. It sighed once, curled against her skin, and began to rock her with the rhythm of the Tethys tide slowed to the pace of a grandmother's breathing. She opened a woven creel and spilled a handful of smaller rose spirals onto the reef. Each spiral landed without sound and became another chambered shell, until the entire Triassic Sea was full of soft rose lights floating in slow motion like jellyfish too sleepy to sting. The keeper lay on the limestone bed, pulled Sienna down beside her,
and tucked a goose-down pillow of kelp silk and nautilus down beneath both their heads. She began to hum a 4-note lullaby in the exact tempo of a reef rocked by a survivor who has forgotten the world exists. The corals answered, their tiny polyps leaning toward the center of the reef until the entire ocean was tilted toward sleep.
The dome of midnight blue lowered an inch, then 2, until the painted constellations brushed their foreheads with the cool kiss of unhurried epochs. They drifted. There was no swimming now, only drifting, along a path of moonlit limestone that curled outward like the inside of a nautilus shell carved from rose. The path opened into the central chamber, where the great nothosaur lay on its side, tail curled into a perfect circle, eyes closed in the small, secret smile of someone who has never needed to wake up. Around it, 4 smaller ichthyosaurs floated on their backs, exhaling bubbles that drifted upward and became new constellations in the Triassic sky. The keeper knelt, gathered 3 chambered shells, and wove them into a crown that settled on Sienna's brow with the weight of a sigh. Each shell pulsed once, releasing a note in the lullaby. The sleeping nothosaur answered with a tiny snore that sounded exactly like the panthalastic at the moment the tide turns. The keeper lay beside her on the limestone bed, one arm beneath her head, the other resting lightly on the rose spiral. She began to hum the missing 3rd part, and every star in the new constellations dimmed to embers. The limestone bed lifted an inch off the reef, rocked once, twice, 3 times, and became a coracle of warm kelp floating on a sea of liquid lullabies. The chambered shells folded their glow and curled into the folds of Sienna's nightgown like friendly baby ichthyosaurs. The reef smoothed itself into satin. The sky of midnight blue exhaled one long, luxurious breath and rolled over in its sleep. The keeper whispered the final secret of the first dawn. Every chamber I ever filled was a promise to someone who had forgotten how to close her eyes. She tucked the rose shell behind both their ears, began to hum the lullaby in reverse, and every spiral answered, until the Triassic was a choir of rose-lit hush. The coracle rocked, the constellations dimmed, the night exhaled and tucked them in. When Sienna woke, the Triassic had folded itself into the rose shell, now tucked behind her ear. The shell was warm, fragrant, humming. On her brow, the spiral crown had become a single rose droplet that smelled of warm kelp and distant tides. She smiled, rolled onto her side, and slept again, deeper this time, because the keeper had taught the tide her name, and the ichthyosaurs had taught it how to pronounce the hush between heartbeats. The rose shell behind Sienna's ear exhaled one last kelp-scented breath and folded itself into a single crimson sail that caught the panthalassic's final sigh and carried her downward through warm red water until the moon itself lowered like a warm blanket across the Permian Basin. She arrived barefoot on a floor of rust-colored silt, so soft it felt like walking on the inside of a sleeping heart. At the basin's center stood a Dimetrodon no larger than a house cat, its neural sail folded into a crimson blanket, eyes half closed in the small, secret smile of someone who has never needed to wake up. Beside it reclined a woman in a cloak of midnight blue sailcloth, barefoot, her silver hair braided with tiny phosphorescent foraminifera that chimed softly whenever the tide forgot to fall. She was not named in any fossil bed,
yet Sienna knew her as the weaver of the last sunset, the one who taught the Permian to dream in slow, red circles. In her hands, she carried a single crimson sail fin, glowing the exact rose of a red-bed hearth at Compline, and a tiny crystal bowl filled with liquid moonlight skimmed from the supercontinent at the moment the last glacier sighed. "Tonight," she whispered, voice the hush of sailcloth brushing sailcloth, "we lower only the sails that forget to wake the wind." She tipped the bowl, let one perfect drop fall onto the fin, and painted a tiny rose crescent on the air above Sienna's heart. The crescent trembled, rose, and became a miniature synapsid no larger than a child's hand, its sail humming a lullaby in the language of warm silt over limestone. The weaver caught the synapsid on the tip of her finger, rolled it gently until it became a tiny sleeper no larger than a sparrow, wrapped in a blanket of crimson sailcloth and cradled by a sleeping Dimetrodon whose fin had turned into a pillow of warm red silt. She placed the sleeper on Sienna's collarbone. It sighed once, curled against her skin, and began to rock her with the rhythm of the Permian tide, slowed to the pace of a grandmother's breathing. She opened a woven creel and spilled a handful of smaller rose crescents on the silt. Each crescent landed without sound and became another neural sail, until the entire basin was full of soft rose lights floating in slow motion like fireflies too sleepy to glow.
The weaver lay on the silt bed, pulled Sienna down beside her, and tucked a goose-down pillow of sailcloth silk and foraminifera down beneath both their heads. She began to hum a 4-note lullaby in the exact tempo of a red bed rocked by a survivor who has forgotten the world exists. The Dimetrodons answered, their tiny sails leaning toward the center of the basin until the entire Permian was tilted toward sleep. The dome of midnight blue lowered an inch, then 2, until the painted constellations brushed their foreheads with the cool kiss of unhurried epochs. They drifted. There was no swimming now, only drifting, along a path of moonlit silt that curled inward like the inside of a synapsid heart carved from rose. The path opened to the central chamber where the great Gorgonopsid lay on its side, saber teeth tucked beneath one paw, eyes closed in the small secret smile of someone who has never needed to wake up. Around it, 4 smaller Dimetrodons floated on their backs, exhaling bubbles that drifted upward and became new constellations in the Permian sky. The weaver knelt, gathered 3 crimson sail fins, and wove them into a crown that settled on Sienna's brow with the weight of a sigh. Each fin pulsed once, releasing a note in the lullaby, and the sleeping Gorgonopsid answered with a tiny snore that sounded exactly like the supercontinent at the moment the last glacier melts. The weaver lay beside her on the silt bed, one arm beneath her head, the other resting lightly on the rose crescent. She began to hum the missing 3rd part, and every star in the new constellations dimmed to embers. The silt bed lifted an inch off the basin floor, rocked once, twice, 3 times, and became a coracle of warm crimson sailcloth floating on a sea of liquid lullabies. The neural sails folded their glow and curled into the folds of Sienna's nightgown like friendly baby Gorgonopsids. The silt smoothed itself into satin. The sky of midnight blue exhaled one long, luxurious breath and rolled over in its sleep. The weaver whispered the final secret of the last sunset. Every sail I ever lowered was a promise to someone who had forgotten how to close her eyes. She tucked the crimson fin behind both their ears, began to hum the lullaby in reverse, and every crescent answered until the Permian was a choir of rose-lit hush. The coracle rocked, the constellations dimmed, the night exhaled and tucked them in. When Sienna woke, the Permian basin had folded itself into the crimson fin now tucked behind her ear. The fin was warm, fragrant, humming. On her brow, the sail crown had become a single rose droplet that smelled of warm silt and distant glaciers. She smiled, rolled onto her side, and slept again, deeper this time, because the weaver had taught the sunset her name, and the Dimetrodons had taught it how to pronounce the hush between heartbeats.
The crimson fin behind Sienna's ear exhaled one last warm breath of red silt and folded itself into a single silver frond that caught the supercontinent's first sigh and carried her upward through mist so soft it felt like breathing inside a cloud that had forgotten how to rain. She arrived barefoot on a seabed of pale quartz sand no human foot had ever pressed, the water above her only ankle deep and glowing the exact rose of a world that has not yet invented color. At the center of the mist stood a woman woven entirely from mist, barefoot, her silver hair braided with tiny vendobionts that chimed softly whenever the tide remembered to breathe. She was not named in any stratum, yet Sienna knew her as the weaver of the first breath, the one who taught the Ediacaran to dream before bones were invented. In her hands, she carried a single frond of charnia, glowing the exact rose of a dawn that has never seen a sun, and a tiny crystal bowl filled with liquid mist skimmed from the primordial sea at the moment the first oxygen sighed. "Tonight," she whispered, voice the hush of mist brushing mist, "we open only the fronds that forget to wake the world." She tipped the bowl, let one perfect droplet fall onto the frond, and painted a tiny rose ripple on the air above Sienna's heart. The ripple trembled, rose, and became a miniature Dickinsonia, no larger than a child's hand, its quilted body humming a lullaby in the language of warm water over quartz. The weaver caught the Dickinsonia on the tip of her finger, rolled it gently until it became a tiny sleeper no larger than a sparrow, wrapped in a blanket of pale mist and cradled by a sleeping charnia whose fronds had turned into pillows of warm quartz sand. She placed the sleeper on Sienna's collarbone. It sighed once, curled against her skin, and began to rock her with the rhythm of the Ediacaran tide, slowed to the pace of a grandmother's breathing. She opened a woven pouch of mist and spilled a handful of smaller rose ripples onto the quartz. Each ripple landed without sound and became another vendobiont, until the entire seabed was full of soft rose lights, floating in slow motion like jellyfish too sleepy to pulse. The weaver lay on the quartz bed, pulled Sienna down beside her, and tucked a goose-down pillow of mist silk and vendobiont down beneath both their heads. She began to hum a four-note lullaby in the exact tempo of a seabed rocked by a world that has forgotten the word hurry. The fronds answered, their tiny quilts leaning toward the center of the mist until the entire Ediacaran was tilted toward sleep. The dome of pale rose lowered an inch, then two, until the painted oxygen brushed their foreheads with the cool kiss of unhurried epochs.
They drifted, There was no swimming now, only drifting, along a path of moonlit quartz that curled inward like the inside of a Vendobiont heart carved from mist. The path opened into the central chamber where the great Sprigina lay on its side, segmented body curled into a perfect question mark. Eyes, if it had eyes, closed in the small secret smile of someone who has never needed to wake up. Around it, 4 smaller Charnia floated on their backs, exhaling bubbles of oxygen that drifted upward and became the very first stars in the Ediacaran sky. The weaver knelt, gathered 3 mist fronds, and wove them into a crown that settled on Sienna's brow with the weight of a sigh. Each frond pulsed once, releasing a note in the lullaby. The sleeping Sprigina answered with a tiny ripple that sounded exactly like the primordial sea at the moment the first breath is taken. The weaver lay beside her on the quartz bed, one arm beneath her head, the other resting lightly on the rose ripple. She began to hum the missing third part, and every oxygen bubble dimmed to embers. The quartz bed lifted an inch off the seabed, rocked once, twice, 3 times, and became a coracle of warm mist floating on a sea of liquid lullabies. The Vendobionts folded their glow and curled into the folds of Sienna's nightgown like friendly baby mists. The quartz smoothed itself into satin. The sky of pale rose exhaled one long, luxurious breath and rolled over in its sleep. The weaver whispered the final secret of the first breath. Every frond I ever opened was a promise to someone who had forgotten how to close her eyes. She tucked the Charnia frond behind both their ears, began to hum the lullaby in reverse, and every ripple answered until the Ediacaran was a choir of rose-lit hush. The coracle rocked. The oxygen stars dimmed. The night exhaled and tucked them in. When Sienna woke, the Ediacaran had folded itself into the Charnia frond, now tucked behind her ear. The frond was warm, fragrant, humming. On her brow, the mist crown had become a single rose droplet that smelled of warm quartz and distant oxygen. She smiled, rolled onto her side, and slept again, deeper this time, because the weaver had taught the mist her name, and the Vendobionts had taught it how to pronounce the hush between heartbeats. The Charnia frond behind Sienna's ear exhaled one last breath of oxygen so pure it tasted of the first morning ever dreamed, and the quartz coracle folded itself into a single silver bubble that rose through the mist until it burst, softly, like a kiss, against the inside of her own eyelid. She opened her eyes inside her Belltown hammock, but the hammock was now a cradle of warm Ediacaran sand, the skylight above her no longer glass, but a living tide pool where tiny Dickinsonia drifted across the ceiling in slow, quilted circles. On her pillow lay every gift the prehistoric ocean had ever given her. The crimson Dimetrodon sail, now a ribbon of sunset tucked beneath her cheek. The rose nautilus shell, now a tiny conch that clicked only when she forgot to count. The mist-woven crown, now a single droplet of primordial dew behind her ear. And, curled in the center like a sleeping cat, a blank scroll no longer than her little finger, its surface still breathing. She unrolled the scroll. It was blank on both sides, yet warm, as though it had spent the night pressed against the heart of the first ocean. A breath of kelp and oxygen drifted from its fibers. She understood. This was the postscript, the page the prehistoric sea had saved for her alone. From the bedside table appeared a reed pen filled with liquid moonlight and a drop of rose-colored ink suspended in midair. Sienna dipped the pen. The drop became a word. Home.
and the word dissolved into 1,000 tiny bubbles that rose through the ceiling and became the tide pool Dickinsonia, now smiling down with her own mother's eyes. Outside, Seattle stirred. Fairies sighed, gulls cooed, a kettle somewhere began its morning song. But every sound arrived muffled, as though the city had pulled a blanket of warm panthalassic water over its head. Sienna sat up. The cradle dissolved into warm sand that trickled between her fingers and vanished. The gifts remained not as objects, but as gentle habits. The crimson sail became the way she now breathed, slow, tidal, deliberate. The rose shell became the soft click her heart made when it decided to trust the dark. The mist crown became the cool spot on the pillow where worry used to lie. She rose, padded to the kitchen and filled the kettle. While it heated, she opened her dive log, the one that had once been filled with frantic 3 a.m. scribbles, and found every page blank except the last. On it, in ink that still smelled of kelp and oxygen, someone, perhaps the weaver, perhaps the keeper, perhaps the ocean itself, had written a short recipe in 3 lines.
Unroll one memory of warm water. Add rose-colored moonlight to taste. Stir with the 8th breath. Serve warm, in bed, with the window open to whatever tide arrives. She smiled, closed the log, and carried her tea back to the hammock. The ceiling tide pool had moved. The Dickinsonia were gone, but in their place a single silver bubble perched on the skylight, glowing faintly with the word hush. It burst once, a sound like warm sand settling, then drifted into the Seattle morning and became part of the ordinary sky. Sienna slipped between cool sheets that now smelled faintly of kelp and limestone, laid her cheek on the exact spot the quartz coracle had taught her, and closed her eyes. Sleep arrived not as a visitor, but as a resident, quiet, familiar, already unpacking its bags. Somewhere across the city, a night shift nurse sighed and slept. A barista closed his laptop and dreamed of crimson sails. A ferry captain parked beneath a street lamp and forgot to turn the engine off, because the hush was enough. The prehistoric ocean had never dried. It had simply learned to fold itself into every bedside table, every closed eyelid, every 8th breath of every insomniac who dared to believe that serenity could be fossilized in the heart. Sienna slept until noon, until 3, until the following dawn, until time itself grew embarrassed and stopped counting. When she finally woke, the hammock was ordinary rope again, but the skylight carried a faint scent of warm quartz, and on her windowsill lay a single rose droplet. She tucked it behind her ear, opened her dive log, and began to write, not a report, not a grant, but a simple letter addressed to every sleepless soul still waiting for their bubble. Dear friend, the ocean is open. Bring nothing but your tired eyes. The weavers have saved you a cradle stuffed with every dream the world has ever floated for you. Sign your name with the 8th breath, and the hush will do the rest. She sealed the letter with a drop of tap water that tasted impossibly of primordial dawn and left it on the sill. By nightfall, the letter was gone, carried away by a silver bubble whose surface left no reflection. Sienna smiled, turned off the lamp, and slept again, this time without the need of reef or basin, because the ocean now lived inside the soft click of her 8th Nautilus heart. And somewhere in a city that had forgotten how to dream, a window opened, a candle dimmed,
And a brand new insomniac sighed the first of 8 breaths that would rock the world softer than it had ever been.